right, as he said, my name is Brittany, and I'm going to talk about image recognition APIs. Just a little background about myself. I had gone to a coding boot camp, 1150. I've only been in the game for a little over a year. I'm now an engineer at Lessonly, but before that, I was working the job that Glenn was advertising earlier. That was my position. So, if anyone hits him up, make sure you kill it. So I have never given a presentation like this, so I'm very nervous. And I ask you to reserve your judgment for anyone who is a less easy target. So being new, though, that had come up with Calvin. We were talking about people who are new developers, especially new at Python, giving the PB&J talks really through the lens of somebody who is brand spanking new and is trying to get into an area, and just to kind of show how you would get into that. So when I was working at Country Mark, I was working with Dynamics AX. It's something that, sorry, wasn't super glamorous all the time. Working with an ERP isn't always for everybody, but it does have its moments. But I always had a lot of support in branching out to different things. So I had been inspired by this talk to start learning some Python, and one area in our company was machine learning stuff. And we had a big library of marketing images that we wanted to try to put labels on. We were thinking of moving them to cloud storage, and we were thinking that we could tag them using an image recognition API with some helpful labels that could then be later used to search through, and you could search through those to navigate the vast amount of pictures. So this is a presentation that will hopefully help people who are new and maybe people who are more experienced but would like to kind of see some of the different APIs and what sort of labels they can provide. So I had already had this Jupyter notebook when I had talked to Calvin. Is this readable? Cool. Excellent. Okay, so for the new people, I had started out, I've heard a lot of people in these talks using Jupyter Notebook, but I had also heard that Python was something that, you have to set up an environment for. It sounded kind of intimidating. One of my weakest spots is the operational aspects of setting up a new project, so I was kind of scared off, but this was very easy. You just Google Anaconda, you download the distribution, and you basically just get it going. Like, it was extremely easy. I think there were a few stumbles at the beginning, but I had to set it up again on this laptop, and it took like 5 minutes. So it's very straightforward. So after you have your notebook running, you can start with whatever you're going to do. In this context, messing with some APIs. So I had gone through 4 different APIs in this order. I had started off with Azure's API, and that's the one that I was really hoping would work because we already had some Azure services. It probably would have been the easiest one to kind of work into our stack. So I really had my fingers crossed for this one. Just a testament to how easy it was. All of this was just copy and pasted right from their documentation. I had to put in my key, and I had to obviously change the image path for whatever was going to be sent to the API. And then you just run it. Like, it even included all of the displays. Actually, hang on. Yeah, it even imported everything to display it nicely, show all the tags, iterate through them. So I had this picture that I was working with. It was this guy. We have a lot of pictures from our refinery, so that was kind of one of the big true tests to see how helpful any image tags would be. So this was my friend for a couple days, and I really wanted to know what these image recognition APIs would tag this with. So Azure's, we're getting, it's a man outdoors, there's a horse, okay, a mirror. But this one also gave a little tagline, what it thought it was. And this was my favorite part. Person standing in front of a mirror posing for the camera. So this one felt very off base, and it just didn't hit the mark for me. I wasn't seeing anything that allowed you to make a custom model. I'm not going to go into custom models at all when it comes to the image recognition APIs, just because that's a whole other beast. But I would have liked to choose something that gave some options there. So the next one I looked at, which was from an article of really popular image recognition APIs, was Clarify. Same thing, just copy and paste, add your key, use your image, and let's see how this one did. Please, come on. So we have industry, man, grinder, natural gas, like that's pretty good. Pump. So I liked the image that this one painted a little better, but it still didn't necessarily, the labels didn't feel like anything that anyone would be searching for anytime. And just for anyone who hasn't ever messed with anything like this, any sort of, these are all the labels that the API was giving the image, and this is the confidence rating. So it's, about 98% sure that it's something to do with industry, which is pretty accurate. So that wasn't quite great either. One thing I did like about Clarify's, though, they had a really nice user interface for building custom models. Not going to go into it, but it allowed people to drag and drop pictures. So like our marketing department could say, here are like 200 pictures of something. I'm just going to dump it in and see if that helps. I liked that. It felt very accessible to people who weren't necessarily technical. So Google's, I'll be honest, I didn't want to sign up for their whole cloud services platform, but part of this whole experiment was playing around with Python. This was one of the first Python projects that I had done, so there are a lot of challenges in like iterating through things, going through JSON files. So they had a spot on the website where you could upload an image and get the JSON back. So for this one, it was more of an experiment in messing around in a different way. So this one, it gave a lot of, it didn't give as many labels. These were the only labels it was actually coming up with: blue collar worker and gas, which, like, gas is pretty good, but still not really. I liked how it had this little dominant color chart, so I could see that being useful for a company that maybe deals in clothing or fashion, or has a marketing department that likes to find images of a certain color to match, a certain part of their website. But this one, again, didn't really feel helpful to us. And this was the whole purpose of the project, to see if we could find something that was actually helpful. We weren't sure if this was worth doing. And I continue to be pessimistic on API 3 out of 4 here. So we got to recognition, and spoiler alert, that ended up being the best one. Another situation of just copy pasting in. It was a little more complicated. There was a little more customization that had to be done, but it was still done in a morning. It wasn't too terrible. And it was configuration that would lend itself later to experimenting with different web services that Amazon has. So trying out this one, we have clothing, apparel, person, helmet, hard hat. So we have things that describe it a little better. If you wanted a man with a hard hat, that at least would help you get more to there. One thing that was really cool about Recognition's API that kind of had it drill down into some more specific labels. So there was like a tier of labels. So there was clothing, and then hat, and then helmet, and then hard hat. There was just this tier of labels that kind of got into, so like hard hat, I was really impressed by that. But again, like, are we gonna be looking for the fact that this guy's wearing pants? That's probably not what we're gonna be searching. But it was still the best one, so I decided to try a few other images instead of just biasing it to the one that I was working with so far. So let's just go through a few that I stole from the CountryMark image library before I left. So we have a barn with a fuel truck right in front of it. We had a folder of vintage things. I wasn't really optimistic that it would know what this is, but wanted to give it a shot. And it knows it's outdoors. Vehicle, truck, fire truck, I get it, that's fine. Tire, it's got those. So I tried something that was kind of similar to see if there were any minute differences it would identify. So same truck, but we got a bale of hay in front of it. And this one, also outdoors, we got the hay, we got the straw. It's still a fire truck, but that's pretty good. If we had a bunch of these, I think this would be something specific enough that if we were going into building a custom model, which AWS does support with something called SageMaker, we could have maybe brought some of these together. But from everything that I saw, the custom models that could be created through AWS, it was more of a technical process, so it was less appealing to me. Thinking about our marketing department taking lead on this, this would have become more of us having to take lead on it, which we would have loved to have a tool to kind of share some of the bandwidth there. So trying another one. Now, we've got two guys with hard hats. Kind of similar to the first one, where it's got just mechanical setting, one of the pictures at a refinery. And these are even different colored hard hats. It still knows they're hard hats. So that was cool. Since I was impressed by it the first time, I'm glad it did it a second time as well. It's still very good at telling people, wear pants. So if we did decide this was of value to us, that's there. And then lastly, here is, oh, nope, this isn't the last one. This simple picture of an oil field. And this was probably the nicest one. Yeah, it didn't even stumble there at all. It's an oil field outdoors. And lastly, I had the boss man in front of a big, shiny Country Mark truck. I was wondering what it would even make of that big reflective surface. And it is as generic as you would expect. Human person. It got that it was a vehicle, but it suspected that it was an aircraft. So not really helpful to us. So in summary, as I said, this was all something that we had just kind of wanted to experiment with and see if this would be helpful for our industry, for the manufacturing industry. The images that would have been most helpful to tag would have been things down at a refinery. But after having looked at the APIs and thought about them a little more critically, we have such a diversity in those pictures that it just felt I felt very pessimistic about this really being of value to us. So it's not something we pursued, but we learned about it. And I learned a lot about Python. It's something that's very easy for anyone to do if you haven't really worked with Python, or if you just kind of wanted to play around with some of these and get some more, run some more pictures through an API and laugh to yourself for like half an hour in a room with the person standing in front of a mirror posing for a camera. And that's all I got.
Awesome. Do we have questions for Brittany?
So what kind of tags were you looking for specifically? And did the documentation that you looked at, was that helpful in kind of tweaking? You mentioned something with the Amazon API that was a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, I hadn't looked through the documentation for AWS a ton. It was admittedly a little more dense than I've ever really worked with, so it felt like a success setting it up in the first place. But it's one that I know that the option was there to use SageMaker to make your custom models. What I was looking for from the endeavor was just kind of seeing what would even come up, answering the question of, would this be helpful? Are the labels that it gives these images anything that people would reasonably be searching for if our marketing department was going through saying they wanted a picture of something relatively specific, if it would return that? And I don't think it would have.
Any other questions for Brittany? Awesome. Well, I have one question. The code, is it available for us to download and try out ourselves?
It can't be.
That'd be great. I'll make sure Mary Beth puts it into the meeting overview that we send out afterwards. So
Okay.
that'd be great for people who want to actually kind of look at the code a little closer and try it out.
Sure.
Awesome. Let's give Brittany another round of applause. Thank you so much.